Everyone, how are you doing today? I hope you all are having a blessed and safe day. And I'm going to be speaking about the law in Romans chapter 7, 1 through 6. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband, so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband. So then, if, while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ, that ye should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God. For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sins which were by the law did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. But now we are delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter. So when we are born again, we are married to one man. We are married to one man, and we are dead to the law. So when we are born again, it is by us walking by faith and not by sight, and not going back to the law after we're saved. A born again believer can do that, but I would not recommend that born again believer to go back to the law, because if we go back to the law, then we are how should I put this? I guess, or from what I heard a person say, is that we are not married to Moses. We are not married to Moses. In John 1, for the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. So when someone is born again, they are married to one man. But if they go back to the law, then they are, I guess you could say they are committing adultery spiritually. Because we are dead to the law, so we should not go back to the law to perfect our flesh, or to perfect to just go back to law just because we can, but that would be a mistake, because if we go back to the law, then we are not walking by faith. We are not walking by faith. And when we go back to the law, we are bearing fruit unto death, because the law is not of faith. For when we were in the flesh, the emotions of sin, which were by the law, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. So if we when we go back to the flesh, when we do the Sabbath, which is a representation of Christ. Christ is our rest. And the Sabbath means rest, but it is not literally to rest. But it is metaphorically, Christ is our rest. I hope you know what I mean, but so like even for example, being circumcised, literally, if someone goes back to the law to after they are saved and they go back to the law to be circumcised, they have fallen from grace. They have gone back to the law and they are trying to either keep them prove that they're saved or keep themselves saved. Well, they are bearing fruit unto death. Because the law is not of faith. And God says to walk by faith and not by sight. So we are not married to Moses. We are married to the husband. We are married to another man. The bride of Christ is married to the one man. Christ is our bridegroom. We are the bride. So when a born again believer goes back to the law, then they are to perfect their flesh, or to gain something or prove something or whatever, then they are committing adultery spiritually. They're like what I have heard before. They are married to Moses. We are not married to Moses. We are married to another man. The bride is married to another man. So that's why when someone is saved, they should walk by faith and not by sight, not go back to the law. In verse 6, but now we are delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit, and not in the oldness of the letter. So what verse 6 is implying is to walk in the Spirit and not go back to the law. In verse 6, when it says not in the oldness of the letter, means to go back to the law, and we are not saved by law keeping, nor are we kept saved by law keeping. It is walking in the newness of spirit, walking in the Spirit. And that is how we should walk, and not walk according to the law. So when someone says that a born-again believer, if someone says that a born-again believer needs to do something to perfect whatever it is, to sanctify themselves, then they are going back to the law. Because we don't sanctify ourselves. To walk in that we are already sanctified once someone believes on Christ. And I gave you one example of going back to the law, and that is to having ourselves sanctify ourselves, which we don't sanctify ourselves. And I'll give you more examples. So now there are born again believers that are deceived, and they are on the milk, and they don't know better. They don't have that knowledge. And I'm sure that there are born again believers. I'm gonna back up. So there are born again believers who are deceived, but we all have been deceived one point or another. So there are born again believers who are deceived, and they go back to the law, saying that we need to do something. Well, if there are born again believers, I know there are born again believers who are deceived and who are under the law, but if there are born again believers that say that we need to sanctify ourselves, or we need to bear fruit by ourselves, no, we don't need to sanctify ourselves. We don't need to bear fruit on our own. We can't try to follow the law. We can't try. Here's another example. Loving the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus' 2 commandments. Now, those 2 commandments are good, but it is not for us to go to do those 2 commandments. Now, when someone brings up that we need to love the Lord thy God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves, when they go to those 2 commandments, well, they are bearing fruit forth unto death. Well, why? Why do I say that they are bearing fruit unto death? Because those 2 commandments that Jesus spoke of is the law. Well, why is it the law? Because we cannot love God perfectly. We cannot love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. Either you do those 2 commandments that Jesus spoke of, either you do those 2 commandments that Jesus spoke of perfectly without missing a beat, without messing up one time, without sinning one time, or you don't do those 2 commandments at all. You don't do those 2 commandments. Either you do it and do it perfectly, or you don't do it at all. And when someone says that we need to go by those 2 commandments, well, that is bringing forth fruit unto death. They are going by the law. They are seeing Moses, or like what I've heard before. They are, I guess, dating Moses. I guess that's what I heard, but they are dating Moses when they are going back to the law. And that is not how we grow, is by going back to the law. We grow by renewing our mind each and every single day. Now, again, those two commandments that Jesus spoke of is good, but we don't go to those two commandments after we're saved. We don't do that. We renew our mind each and every single day. That is how we grow. That is how we love, is by renewing our mind. Now, in Galatians, Galatians 5:22 through 25. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. So, after someone is saved, they are born again. They are saved, sealed until the day of redemption, and they are in the Spirit. But if they go back to the law, then they are not walking in the Spirit. Now they are walking in the flesh. Like what it says in verse 24. And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lust. So once someone believes on Christ, their old man has been crucified with Christ. That is the flesh. That is the flesh. So going by those two commandments is I guess you can say going back to date Moses, like again what I've heard. So we don't improve ourselves. We don't try to do good. We don't try to do anything to make God pleased with us. Because once we believe on Christ, He's already pleased with us. He's not pleased with the flesh, but He is pleased with us already. And I believe that even when a born-again believer is saved and they are in the flesh, He is pleased with us. He is not displeased with us, but He is pleased with us. But He is displeased with the flesh, but He's not displeased with us. We are already pleasing in His sight. And here's another example. So if someone tells someone that we need to go by the law after we're saved to gain rewards or just to grow or anything like that, well, they are bringing fruit unto death, because that is going by the flesh when they are going by the law. We don't need to go back to the law to gain fruit. To gain fruit is by renewing our mind each and every single day, resting in Him, and that is how we can grow, and that is how we can bear fruit. Christ bears the fruit in us. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything because we are complete in Him, and we are complete in Him. We have everything that we have, and that is Christ Himself. So, so again, in John 1:17, the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. So those who are going back to the law, they are dating Moses. They are committing adultery spiritually. But when we walk in newness of life, when we walk in the Spirit, then we are walking by faith. Right here in verse 3. So then, if, while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she be called an adulteress. So going back to Moses is committing adultery. We are married to one man. We are married to the bridegroom. And the only one that we should be married to is Jesus Christ, because we are the bride of Christ. We are his bride. He is the bridegroom. And when we are walking by faith, then we are dead to the law. In verse 3, but if her husband be dead, which he's talking about the law, but if her husband be dead, she is free from the law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. And that man is Jesus Christ. Like I said, we are the bride of Christ. He is the bridegroom. And so that is how we can grow. So I'm going to say this one more time now. We do not need to go back to the law to perfect the flesh. We don't need to do that. We don't need to go back to the law to gain something, to gain rewards, or anything. We are complete in him. We are found blameless. We are, he is pleased with us, and we have been made righteous because we believe on Christ. Because once someone believes on him, his righteousness is imputed to us once we believe on him. And so, to be saved is by believing on Christ, believing that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, and he was buried, and he rose again on the third day according to the scriptures. That is how we are saved. And after we are saved, we should not go back to the law. We should walk by faith and not by sight. And so, I hope you all have a blessed and safe day, and I will see you in the next video.